Hello, you're back with Dave and Tim at the Single Malt Review, and it must be time for another Sherry Monster.
Yeah,
This is Drinks by the Dram Tasting Set, another heavily sherried offering. And today, we're going into the darkness.
Yeah, the darkness in many respects. One, the name, as this one is merely referred to as
Darkness.
And darkness in terms of everything else, because that's what it's going to tell us. We've got a mystery malt on our hands, which is one of our favourite malts, if anyone has ever watched our Christmas content. We love a blind taste around these parts, so I'm... the anticipation. The anticipation is real. But what this is, I'll give you a wee close-up, not that there's much to see on a wee sample bottle, but it's an 8-year-old. It is a curious strength of 47.8%, but that could have a lot to do with the fact that it is unchill filtered and uncoloured. So this is probably as low as they could get away with, while keeping the non-chill filtration from clouding up the joint.
So Darkness have been putting out whiskey for a wee while now. It's all independently bottled by them, and its, I think, defining characteristic is lots of sherry. In this case, it is a bourbon cask matured whiskey, 8 years old, which has been finished for at least 3 months in Oloroso sherry octave casks. So they've had custom made these tiny 1/8 sized barrels of Oloroso sherry wood.
Yeah, so a pretty condensed few months in there, even though it might not seem like a whole lot on paper. But that said, the colour is, I wouldn't have called that, I'd call that modestly dark at most. That's not,
but for 8
nothing
years,
crazy
that's
here.
not super old, and that finish was not very long either, so it's a good amount of colour in a fairly short amount of time, hopefully.
So, are we going to get any hints as to what this might be? And initially from the nose, no.
Big honey.
This is weird.
And clover flower on the nose.
That's spicy too. There's aniseed. And what is that?
Hint of clove, maybe?
Yeah, there is some clove. There's some black pepper as well. This is pretty spicy. Which a lot of wood contact with sherry will certainly give you. It's pretty... I guess it's I'm about to say there's kind of a prickle on this one, but it's tantamount to 50%. So
nearly
of course
48, so it's going to have a bit of heat.
And fairly wooden.
The nosy notes from Drinks by the Dram offer candied orange peel, chocolate peanuts, cooking spices, warmth, and some dried cherry.
What's a chocolate peanut?
Chocolate coated peanut.
Oh, okay. I guess. Yeah, I suppose. I've never really had one.
Ooh, I like that. That has... That's got some old sherry flavours. There's a real dark orange and candied orange zest hit to it. Good bit of heat from the relatively youthfulness, though. There's still a bit of active young spirit there. I like that a lot. I'm going to have another sip at their full strength. It is very heavily on the sweet end. If you don't like that, this will not be the whiskey for you.
It's pretty soupy, yeah. I'm trying to horn in rather than being useful in describing tasting notes. I'm deep in the hole of trying to guess where this comes from. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer.
The bourbon barrel maturation, which accounts for most of this, is certainly contributing, but it's definitely just part of the chorus, and it's not really leading the way. The sherry, I think, is dominating here.
With water, there's a little bit of a smoke on here.
Interesting.
There's a little bit of peat. Just a smidge, but there is peat on here.
Okay, adding water has made it a bit more conventionally sherry whiskey flavoured, but still it's retained that intense sweetness, whereas often that would give way to danker tinned fruit notes. Here it's keeping that rich confectionery and sweet lemon and orange and candied peel.
There's a minerality and a coal smoke. Slightly anthracitic quality.
I see on the finish, yes, a little bit catches in throat, a bit of a burn. Yeah.
I wonder if this is a Benromic.
Interesting.
And we haven't seen Benromic for ages, since they sort of retooled the whole thing and came out with that superlatively good 10-year-old. They've been, aside from continuing to sell the 10-year-old, they've kind of gone quiet, but I wonder if that's what we've got
that
here.
is growing increasingly, sort of wood smoke is building sip by sip.
There's a mineral flintiness as well, and there's a distinct, I'm not sure where the smoke comes from, be it peat, anything else, but there is an element of smoke in here.
We had just a skerrick more of water.
Interesting. Interesting, and Benromic is as close as I can get, and I'm racking my brains for Speysiders that do... Well, I suppose for that matter, Benriach, they do plenty of plenty of peated offerings, don't they? So we'll say between Ben Romick and Ben Riek, two extremely similar sounding names. That's probably where my guess is hedging.
Yeah.
But
because we've had 8-year-old age statement single malt Scotch before, which has been frankly a little bit disappointing because of its youthfulness. 8 years just isn't enough time for some whiskies to reach their full potential. This one, though, this has gone places in that short place.
I think I'd develop that statement even further and say we have, on more than one occasion, had pretty immature, pretty incomplete 8-year-old sherry butt matured whiskey. Sherry butt matured whiskey, quite the opposite to octaves, matures at a snail's pace because the opposite effect is in effect in that the surface area is marginal compared to the smaller casks. And I think we have seen, and it's a continuing trend, sadly, desperately immature whiskey time and again coming out of that kind of maturation. Not in every case, you know. I mean, I've mentioned Arbuna recently, but they know how to do it, which is just to make sure it's really, really, really strong and get your concentration that way. But we've certainly seen some kind of lacking 8-year-old or around that ballpark whiskey recently, but it's almost uniformly been sherry matured, not finished. They had a good robust upbringing in more conventional bourbon wood, and then the finish has been laid on top. So I think they've had a lot more of a direct control over how the sherry manifests. And when you're dealing with something that's already mature, then I think you have a lot more rope to work with when it's not quite such a dicey situation of get it out right now, you know, ready or not kind of a thing. I think there's more breathing room when you're dealing with an already mature bourbon background stuff. But I don't know. That's just a theory. This one I think is, and I still wish I could kind of knuckle down on where it came from. I'll do one more guess, and that's Rothes. It's just possible this came from Rothes, and they've got a weird savoury mix in the joint, but I don't think it's Rothes. And then I'll have to leave that bone alone at this juncture. Unless anyone's got any suggestions in the comments, please let me know if I came close. If you know for sure.
Oh, just for completeness' sake, the tasting notes for the finish speak for being slightly oily with a hint of smoke.
Yeah.
Though chocolatey hints persist, and so the smoke
for
is
sure.
reflected there too.
Interesting.
Sorry, whereas it would feel bad if I only covered 2 of the 3 tasting notes. So, yeah.
So the scores. What you're all here for. I think this is probably going to be a 90 from me. All things considered, it does have sherry. It is not a sherry bomb. It has enough sherry to be, you know, in a box labelled sherry matured whiskies, for sure. But it's otherwise the sherry's deployed quite carefully. They've used a fine brush. They haven't just thrown the bucket at it like a lot of the other sort of things masquerading as sherry bombs. So no, I think it's a 90 from me.
Yeah.
If one of these things were not fitting quite so keenly into place, I think it would have tumbled quite badly. But as put together as it is, that's doing pretty good stuff for me. What do you think?
Yeah, graphing quality versus age for Scotch whisky, like we mentioned that some under 10-year-old, 8-year-old especially, Scotch whisky have some woefully immature spirits sometimes, but it's not the case here. This is a fully well-rounded whiskey for its age. I think it's 89 points from me. This is excellent, and it makes me want to try some of the other darkness offerings like their PX cask finish.
No, they're good stuff, and we'll have to keep an eye on them. I think it seems like their mode of operation is to simply sell one batch and then make the next one. So this is, and annoyingly, they don't really have a batch number or anything on here. This is merely what we got. So whether this is even still indicative of the current release, I'm not quite sure. But it probably won't be forever. So anyone with any experience with other darkness, or if they've had a very recent darkness, then they might be able to compare and contrast with our thoughts. And please let us know in the comments. But that has been this one, the darkness. And it's going to be another dark one, I think, because we're going to finish this box, damn it. We are going to get to the bottom of it. So, Stanger, we'll be right back.